Hello! Welcome to Artist Banter, a show where we delve into the vast and unique professional world of artists. Learn about artists' stories, their professional careers, and the interesting work that they create. Today I'm joined by Michael Alaynick, an audio technician and boom operator on film sets. Thank you, Michael, for being on the show. I initially met you on a plane from Washington, D.C. back to California, and we talked for about 2 hours about the film industry and the work that you do. So I thought it was so interesting, and I wanted to have you back on the show on Artist Banter and talk to you and let the audience know more about the film and audio industry that you work in. So thank you again for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we're going to start right off the bat. What is it that you do exactly, on film sets?
So I work in production sound, and very simply, I am responsible for recording the dialogue on set. That way they don't have to replace anything in post, which can be really costly because you'd have to rent an ADR studio, you'd have to hire the actors again. My job is to not only capture the dialogue, but we like to look at it as more capturing a performance. So I primarily work on narrative, meaning scripted and commercial sets, but production sound ranges from or across all types of different film work, broadcast, reality, documentary. But like I said, my specialty is commercial and narrative. Yeah.
That's really cool. And what exactly technology based do you focus on sets? What do you do with?
So we have boom mics, lav mics, which are the mics that they're typically hidden, and then you'd have mic packs, also they're transmitters that send back to the receivers, recorders. I mean, there's quite a bit of technology we're working with, but basically it's a lot of microphones and recorders and wireless.
So it's perfect to be on the podcast with all these microphones around.
Yeah.
I love that. And so what does a typical day look like for you when you're working on set?
Well, to make it simpler, because depending on the type of production, it can vary. I'll focus on, if I'm working as a boom op on commercials. So I would show up, and usually I like to get there early so I can grab breakfast. We have catering, which is typically pretty good on commercials. And so I'll show up about half an hour early, get breakfast. A lot of the times, crew parking and base camp will not be the same place that we're shooting. So we'll take what's called the pass van, which is essentially a shuttle, over to set. Occasionally, we're able to actually pull up to location, unload, and then repark. So if that's a possibility, I'll see if we can do that, just because it is a little more efficient to just get the gear out and get it to where we need to be. I'll do kind of a walkthrough of the day. So if sometimes we're on a really big property and we might be filming in a lot of different locations. I'll see we're starting here, let me go here, let me go here. Is there a spot where we can live all day? If not, where's the ideal spot to first park the cart? And then, so we can pretty much come up with a game plan, and then the mixer will get there, we'll unload. You have a safety meeting at the beginning of the day. So the first AD, the first assistant director, they're in charge of making the schedule. They run the show. Mm-hmm. They'll go through the day, and then from there you get started. Usually that would entail setting the cart up, getting power to the cart, getting our antennas up. A lot of times we'll run them out to set. That way we have the best reception on our wireless. Get all of the mic packs and wires prepped. Get Comtex out. So Comtex are these little belt pack receivers that have headphones that go to them, and that's how the client and production and the director hear what is being recorded.
Oh, that's really cool. Mm-hmm. So a typical day, let's say if you're on set, how many hours is that for you?
On a commercial, at least 10 usually. It's pretty rare if it's under. That's a shorter day for us. Commercials are nice because they're usually not longer than 10. I've done my share of 17, 18-hour days, fortunately not too often. But yeah, 14, 15-hour days can be pretty common on some shows. A friend of mine was on, they're doing a Dexter reboot. I think it's a prequel now.
Oh my gosh, I think that they're filming in Long Beach, right?
Oh, they might be. I don't know if he mentioned where they were filming, but he was telling me those were 14, 15-hour days.
Oh my gosh. So is that an industry standard to work around 10 to 15 hours, or?
I would say 10 to 12 is more the quote unquote standard that days are scheduled around for commercial and narrative. It's less than 10 would be a short day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm complaining about a 6-hour shift, so I maybe should rethink that.
Yeah. No, like yesterday for me was a 6-hour day, and I was just like, oh wow, that was it. I
That's
mean,
so funny.
then it was an hour and a half of driving back from Santa Monica, but no.
Right. And so you mentioned that you have sometimes different locations where you film. Is it mainly LA based? Do you do more San Diego, more up north? I guess my question is like, where do you usually film?
So I typically work in LA. If you're doing more like documentary stuff or reality work, you probably would travel. Like I have friends who work on Survivor, and that's in Fiji. So it's like that's yeah.
Whoa.
I have a buddy who's done a lot of Bear Grylls stuff. So I mean that's all over. That can be in the U.S., out of the U.S. But for commercial work, it's like if they're gonna shoot out of the LA area, they'll hire a local crew. Same with narrative, they might fly department heads out, but it's unless you're on like a really high end scale of production, they're gonna hire local.
Wow. So it sounds like it's a very exciting job. Do you have a favorite place that you've like worked at or that they like sent you to?
Um, I do like shooting on a soundstage. It's just a lot easier. It's like if you're I really like shooting at CBS Radford. It's just CBS's lot over in like Toluca Lake area. It's a really easy lot to navigate. And just logistically, it's so much easier to shoot on a stage.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. And so, how did you first start doing this kind of work?
So I always knew I was interested in either working in the music or the film industry. And when I was finishing high school, or when I was in high school, did an internship at a music studio and started learning Pro Tools and was just like, oh, I really like doing this. So I started looking into trade schools that teach that, and I found one that had a post sound emphasis, and I liked that because I felt like everyone's kind of, or not everyone, but a lot of people study music production, and I felt like studying post sound was more advantageous because it was a more niche field.
Right.
So, and it was also specifically a Pro Tools school. Pro Tools is the industry standard for sound editing.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So I went there, and as I was finishing up school, I kind of realized, like, I don't like sitting in front of a computer 10 plus hours a day. Um, and I started doing production sound. I had access to some gear, and so I was going out and doing that, and kind of just lucked out and met people who were already working in the film industry who started bringing me on to work for them. And after a couple years of doing production sound and post, I was just like I just realized I like doing production sound a lot more, so I started doing that full time around 2017.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. And so for the audience who does, can you explain what the main difference between like pre like when you're working on set and then post
Oh, okay.
audio?
So production is when you're on set, and that's when you're actually shooting the content. Post is after it's been edited and you're doing the final mix. You're doing a dialogue edit, sound effects edit, Foley, ADR. Um, Pretty much while it is really fun and it is a cool job. I just didn't really want to sit in front of a computer all day. I was just like, this isn't for me. I like working with other departments. I like the collaboration that's involved with production, which it's still there in post, but not to the extent that I liked.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's totally valid not to want to sit in front of a computer for
Yeah.
that long. It can get really boring and tiring after a while.
Yeah, I got a lot of we call it ear fatigue, where it's like you're listening to the same thing over and over again and get to the point where it's like, am I making this better or worse? I can't really tell. I need to step away for a bit.
That's actually so interesting, but I feel that, especially editing a podcast, and I'm like, so I can't hear my voice anymore.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that a part of your job that you really enjoy is the interaction and collaboration with other departments and other people. Who exactly do you interact with on a film set? Who do you work with?
So as a boom op, I'd be interacting and collaborating with the first AD. So the first AD, I'd say, is one of the harder jobs on set. They're in charge of making the schedule and actually running the show.
Oh, wow.
So they're one of the main people that I work with. Also, I mean, within my own department, the sound mixer, and if we have a utility on commercials, you typically don't. Narrative, you have a bigger department. The utility, but also camera operators. I mean, we're constantly working together to just work out camera moves, and lighting department is, you don't want to have any boom shadows in the shot. Um, I work with actors to an extent, but I wouldn't say I'm working with them too closely. Directors, wardrobe department. As we have to mic up actors, so I work very closely with wardrobe. They're usually there if I'm miking up the actors. On a longer running show, a lot of times if this is more narrative than commercial, I'll go and look at what the wardrobes are for the day, and so I can prep the wires accordingly. Um, and sometimes it's like you might uh want wardrobe to maybe like sew a pocket for a transmitter into a jacket so you could and then like cut a hole in the jacket so you could run the wire through there, the wire meaning the lav mic.
Oh, that's
um
really cool. It's
yeah.
interesting. I didn't actually like think of that.
Yeah, so like I did a little bit of second unit work on Insecure, and one of the actors on that, it's like there's a hole cut in like this top part of the jacket, and you just run the wire down there and out through here, and then there's just a pocket sewn into the jacket for us to put the mic pack, and it just makes it really quick.
Oh, I love that. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a lot of more interactive. Like, hey, like let's both collaborate to make sure that this works right.
hmm
Do you ever work with like the makeup department to like conceal wires, or is that something that you don't really do?
I haven't done that. I know that so there's a mixer named Simon Hayes. He's a UK based mixer. He mixed Wicked. He's done tons of really big stuff.
Oh, rad.
At the level of production he's working, where they have very extensive pre-production, I know that they have worked with the makeup department to like they'll have a wire exposed and they'll cover it in makeup, but that's the only time I've ever heard of something like that being done. Makeup department, usually I'll know the on-set makeup artist, but I don't necessarily have much collaboration with them.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But that's cool that you guys work with like costumes and stuff. Because
Yeah.
it's something that you, when you're on set, you can think about when I'm watching a commercial or when I'm watching a movie, I'm not really thinking about something like that.
Yeah, and commercials also tend to be a little less collaborative. They're shorter form content, meaning that it's not a long running thing for like 3+ months. It's like maybe 2-3 days. So sometimes on commercials, I don't actually really work with the costumers. But I'm always working very closely with camera, lighting, and the assistant directors. I'd say those are the three main departments I work closely with.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. And since you're collaborating so much, do you recognize people like on sets? Like if you work on different commercials or different
Oh yeah,
like,
all the
longer
time.
sets?
Yeah. No, it's always nice to, you establish a rapport with someone on one show and then you go to another one and that rapport carries over. Um, so I do a lot of work for DraftKings on their commercials, and they tend to hire the same people, which is really nice because it's like in every commercial, it's like I kind of know like, okay, they always have the same first AC camera assistant. So the first ACs are in charge of pulling focus, making sure everything is sharp. So they always have the same DP, the same AD. So it's nice to on those commercials know like, okay, I know who I'm going to be working with, and we all work really well together.
That sounds like it makes it a little bit easier because you don't really have to figure out how people work. You already know them.
It definitely does. Yeah, that's one of the other challenges. Is sometimes you step on a show and it's a new person, and maybe they have a little bit of a difficult personality that it's like, okay, I got to find a way to make this work, which it does happen. Fortunately for me, not that often though.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good to hear.
Yeah.
What are some challenges that you and your like coworkers or the people you work with face in the industry specifically at the moment?
Um, quite a few, to be honest. I mean, so a lot of work is leaving, not just LA, but the states in general. And also there's just less productions than there used to be. So there's definitely been since 2023 just a lack of work across all areas of production. I don't know how affected broadcast would be. So broadcast would be the news, events, sporting events, concerts, things like that. I'm not in that world, so I don't know how impacted that is. From what I know, they're still pretty busy. But for narrative and commercial, reality as well, I imagine documentary, but I don't do too much doc work. That's been pretty slow. So a lot of work has gone to Canada and the UK.
Whoa.
One of the reasons, and I don't have any stats to back this up, this is just me hypothesizing, is they don't have to pay into healthcare plans there, and that saves them a lot of money.
Oh, that's right. Huh?
Yeah. And I think that's why Canada and the UK have taken a lot of work. because while they are still union shows, they're saving a lot of money not paying into health plans.
That
Uh,
makes a lot of sense. I
yeah.
mean, they have universal healthcare over there. Wow. So it's impacting Hollywood a lot, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like on the Paramount lot, because I was working on that earlier this year. There were a total of 3 shows shooting there, over the summer.
What's
And
like a typical number pre
that I don't,
2023?
I mean, I don't know offhand, but definitely more than 3 shows. Another challenge would be that there's been a shift in the type of things being filmed, and a lot of the void of because major studios aren't putting out as many shows. One of the things that's been filling the void is influencer content.
Right, that's right.
And so things are very content driven now. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but what I've run into is that the scale of those productions is a lot smaller. So a department that would normally have 5 or 6 people might have 2 people.
Whoa, so
Um,
big downscale then.
yeah, and also you're working with producers who, because I feel like a lot of the times they might have been like, oh, they're a friend of this influencer who now has blown up and they brought their friend with them, which is really cool, but they don't quite know what different departments need. And it can be a little difficult uh, when you're brought onto these jobs and it's like you have entire departments that aren't hired. So the normal people you would go to for things aren't there. And we're kind of having to adapt to that, or even just negotiating. It's like they don't know what we're asking for, and so
Right,
we're having to explain to them how to do their job without telling them this is how you do your job.
right.
So that's been a bit of a challenge that I think in the next few years we'll see where that leads.
And so it sounds like people who are working on sets are starting to have to know more than just their job that they're assigned. Do you feel that like now the standard is that you have to be like this multifaceted tool that should know everything how to do?
Not for me personally, but I know other departments, especially like post coordinators. I know that they're now expected to be able to step into an assistant editing role, or be able to help out uh, in areas of post that they normally wouldn't have been. For me, it's more so that we're expected to work as a single person department when we typically would have had 2 or 3 people. Sometimes that's doable. It's like if the schedule is within a realistic expectation for the budget, I can work as it's called a one-man band.
Right.
Um, but there's times where it's like this just isn't. It's not possible, especially if you have let's say it's a scripted thing and you want to shoot like 5-6 pages in a day and there's like 8-9 speaking roles and 3 cameras. It's like if I were to be hit up for a job like that, they're like, we want one person in your department, I would turn it down because I'm not going to be able to deliver a product that I would be happy with with that workflow.
No, that absolutely makes sense. And I think with the rise of like AI and all these automated like services, people are just expecting you to be able to do it on your own when it, like you said, it's not just a one-person job. It's like a multiple person thing.
Yeah, and with AI, I think that we're really just starting to see the effects that's going to have. I know that Robert Zemeckis has a new film with Tom Hanks that I don't know if it came out yet, but I know they used AI on that instead of
Whoa.
hiring VFX artists. So I actually am not planning on seeing the film because of that. Um, but it did save them a lot of time and money, but it also cost a lot of people jobs.
Yeah.
With my job in particular, we haven't started seeing the effects of AI, but I mean, the ability to take a sample of someone's voice and recreate or have them say dialogue is there. And that's actually been there for past 10 years. When I was in trade school, that was already a technology that existed. It's really just the past few years we started hearing about it. Um, so I think that that'll definitely start to become a thing, especially within the non-union world within the next few years, and that will, definitely start to take a lot of work.
What is the film industry doing to address AI? Or are directors really making an effort to not use AI? Yeah.
I think in regards to the first part, I think that the film industry is not doing enough.
Right.
I think that the response needed to have been AI has no place in our industry, and we should have every union should have just gone on strike and said we are not working until we have it in writing that AI has no place in our industry. That did not happen. And it was very disappointing to see, especially that SAG did allow AI use in their contract. And they kind of set the precedent there. They're one of the stronger unions. So
Do you think that like directors are really making an effort to not use AI, or they care more about cutting costs or what have you?
I think most directors aren't focused on the cost. I think it's more producers and production managers in the studios. Directors
Okay.
aren't really involved for the most part with budgetary
Okay,
stuff.
didn't know that.
I mean, there are directors who are. I don't want to just say no directors are, but I think studios would be more involved in that. I can't speak to directors going out of their way to or not to use AI. Um, I think that in the next few years, we'll really see if that ends up being a thing. I think that where AI one is being implemented more and will be first implemented is visual effects.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One, VFX is not unionized, which is insane to me.
What is VFX?
Visual effects, CGI, anything with green screen or that's not a practical effect is a visual effect.
Wow, and that's not covered by.
That's not a unionized department, which is pretty crazy. So that's why they're feeling the impact of that right now. And I think that they're going to continue to be the first affected. It's also
Do you
if
think like the
look at-
quality of films would go down due to having AI, or do you think that they're just gonna stay the same? Or
I want to say the quality will go down. But you know, I think what we'll see with the rise of AI is things end up feeling the same. And
Right.
there's not things that it's like, oh, wow, this was very original, or wow, this performance was very captivating. Everything's going to feel like, it's like, oh, we've seen this already.
Right,
Because it's AI.
That's what
Yeah.
AI is. It takes,
I think we'll see a lack of creativity and originality. Yeah.
and that makes total sense because that's what AI is. It takes other things, regurgitates it, and spits it out.
Mhm.
So, yeah, well, I think the whole world is kind of waiting to see where it'll go, but hopefully the film industry keeps its authenticity and its originality because I think that's what makes it so special to see fun movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think just in general, where the industry is going is we're seeing less shows in general. Studios are focusing on just they'll have a few really big flagship shows. There's no mid-level stuff, and then we're gonna have a lot of content. And um, I don't have much insight on the content. I think that's even a generation behind you is who's really watching like that TikTok and Instagram content. But I think that at least in terms of the work in LA, that's really where things are going. It's a content machine. It's like everyone needs new 10-second videos every day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the attention spans of people are shorter and shorter and shorter.
Which I mean, I do get because it's like I am on TikTok and I typically use it for like I need to find a recipe for something, but sometimes I'll just end up scrolling and it's like if a video is like a minute and a half or more long or like not a minute and a half, but it's like longer than a minute and a half, I'm like I'm done. I'll swipe past it. So I get it. It's like I totally get it. But I think that's also that the people making content aren't filmmakers, and I'm not saying that in a way to denigrate them, but there's a reason that films and TV shows hold our attention. It's because people know how to pace those things.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a reason why it's like the running joke that someone will watch 5 episodes of an hour-long show in a row. It's like because the filmmakers knew how to pace it in a way that it's captivating 4 or 5 hours. I just started rewatching Game of Thrones, and it's like I watched like 8 episodes in one day, or over the course of 2 days, and it's like because those filmmakers knew how to pace those episodes, and that's I think one of the reasons that content is shorter is they're not filmmakers. Once
I
again,
guess
that's
it
not
makes
to
sense that
denigrate
the content is being shorter because, again, like, they're not professionals. They don't really know how to grab your attention and make an artful film that is interesting to audiences. So I understand that direction in that sense.
Mhm. And I think also content has to be really flashy.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
does.
that's something I've noticed is like it has to be it's colorful, but not like literally like full of colors. It has to catch someone's attention, and it is hard. It is hard to constantly put out content
Yeah.
that is attention grabbing and can communicate a message very concisely in 10 to 15 seconds. And especially coming from the commercial world, it's like watching them come up with like, okay, this is a 5-second video that has to sell a product. That is hard to do. So it's like, to kind of go back that what I was saying before, like, not that their jobs are easy. It's just it's a different. It's different than. I'm kind of rambling and don't really know where my
No,
point
that
was.
makes
I'm
sense. Like,
sorry.
it's a completely different, like, way of filming. It's a completely different way of making content that I think the world has ever seen before. Because
Mhm.
TikTok, it's not new, but it's relatively new. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I even heard of TikTok until a year or so ago.
yeah, it got
Yeah.
really big a couple years ago. So
Yeah, because the first time I heard of it, it definitely would have been like it would have been on set. They were talking about like, oh, this is for TikTok, and I was just like, I don't know what that is. It's like there's a new one called Whistle, which like
oh, I have never heard of that one.
I had it. This is how I find out about this stuff because I'll work on something and they'll be like, oh, this is for TikTok, this is for Whistle, and I'm just like,
So you know the inside scoop then.
sometimes I guess like I did I mean, and Whistle's definitely known because like I've done stuff like there's like branded content with Nintendo and Whistle.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Okay.
like
So it's pretty
they have like
relevant
brand
then.
money behind it. But yeah, there's just a I heard like Chick-fil-A has a streaming service now.
What?
Yeah.
Dude, that's crazy. I'm interested in that one.
I'm curious. I'm just like, what are they putting out?
Yeah, but like, there's so many different like content forms and like different apps now that I think that the film industry or just anyone in general is just trying to figure out this new format, this
Mhm.
new attention grabbing, this new set of film. So it's definitely going to change the industry whether we like it or not, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I think um this is a quote from, I think it's the CEO of Sony, that there in the next 2 to 3 years there's going to be a lot of acquisitions and mergers between the major studios. We already have
Mm.
Paramount that was sold, and I think we're going to keep seeing that, and it's going to take a few years before the dust settles from that and we really see where things are going. I know that we have like independent studios that are starting up. I keep hearing like Mark Wahlberg has a studio in Vegas that's supposed to. I mean, for years they've been building it. And apparently, it's like they have productions going now, or soon to have productions going. So I think that what we're going to end up seeing is a new market for independent productions. And I mean, A24 started off very small, and now I would say they're a competitor to the major studios.
I really hope to see that these like more small independent production companies or these smaller independent companies continue to grow because I feel like they allow for more creativity, less of these like big production companies that have more like creative liberty for people rather than just making films that are going to make big money, big profits.
Yeah, and I mean, I've always been more drawn towards independent films rather than the blockbusters. I mean, one of my favorite movies is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I don't know if you've heard of that movie.
I haven't, but I'm going to add that to my list.
It's really good. It was a lot of really big actors took a pay cut to make that movie.
Oh, I love that.
It's a very original story. You've heard of Being John Malkovich? No, these films all came out like when you were born, so.
I gotta like go back and watch these movies though.
Eternal Sunshine's worth watching. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's Jim Carrey in a serious role, which you don't see very often.
Oh yeah, you don't.
Yeah. Mark Ruffalo, Kate Winslet, and this was like these actors were at their peak, and the script was just that good.
I love seeing that because it feels like sometimes these actors just go to these roles for like big money or big salaries, but like when they take pay cuts or they like do these smaller independent films, they really believe in the movie and the story.
Yeah, I mean another independent film that did really well was Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, that didn't it win an Oscar?
I mean, probably several.
I think so. It was a really good film.
Yeah. And I mean that was an independent movie. I think that was A24. Pretty sure A24. Yes, they did produce that one because I worked on a press junket for that, and A24 is one of that production company's clients. But yeah, I think for me, A24 is one of the companies that is putting out well-funded independent movies. And that's the other thing with independent movies is as a crew member, it can be hard to make a living working on those.
So in the future, would you prefer independent films or these like box office, like big blockbuster production companies?
In terms of as a viewer or working on them?
Working on them.
I mean, I would rather work on a film that's going to pay better, as I think anyone would rather have the higher paying job. I actually really like doing short form content. I really like doing commercials. I feel like it's a better work-life balance. If you're on a long-running show, it kind of becomes your life. You're working 60 plus hours a week for months on end, and you don't really have time for much else. And I find that I get burnt out doing that. So prior to 2023, I used to be able to fill up my schedule with commercial and day play work. Day play meaning that I'm brought on as needed to shows. So you might have a show that has consistent second units, meaning that maybe 3 times a week they bring on another unit to help film things that main unit can't do.
Right.
Yeah, and it used to be busy enough that you could do that, but now that there's less things being shot, I've had to kind of pivot and do a lot of like just non-union like content.
I feel like you have such a diverse like idea of what film sets you've worked on, what the industry is. Are you always going to stay as what you're doing right now, or do you foresee yourself doing any other jobs maybe within the film industry or even a different one?
Within the film industry, I'm doing what I would want to do, but if the industry continues to not really feel sustainable, which right now it doesn't, I think a lot of people, or I know a lot of people are also of this mindset, we're going to have to find something else. So fortunately, I'm still young enough to pivot. What I would pivot to, I don't know. But I know a lot of people are probably going to give it maybe another year. But we hopefully next year we'll have a better idea as to where things are going.
I hope things ramp up back again, because it's such an interesting industry, it's such an interesting field, and obviously so much creative work comes out of that. So I hope if things ramp up again, because it's a little bit sad that things are being exported to other places or even to like AI technology to do someone's job. Yeah,
and I mean it's not just things are being outsourced, it's just companies, they're trying to navigate the new market, because they're mid-level shows. I'm assuming they weren't making money off of them, and that's why like Netflix would like put out a show for a couple seasons and then cancel it. And it would be like, oh, like it wasn't super well known, but like that's what was going on. Is like there were a lot of mid-level productions, which that's also a way to work your way up to the bigger ones.
Right, exactly.
And that's kind of where myself and a lot of people are at, is that those mid-level productions were feeding us, not just in terms of a career path, but that's what was paying our bills. And without those mid-level productions, we don't have a way to work up, and we also don't have a way to pay our bills. So hopefully we end up seeing these independent companies, if the studios don't bring back mid-level productions, the independent companies can get, enough funding to compete on the same level with the major studios.
So today we've talked a lot about the challenges that you might face as a person working on a set, the film industry, AI, and the interesting professional work that you do on sets with audio. For any students who are watching and that are interested in film, what advice would you give them as we wrap up this episode if they're interested in a field that you're working in?
It's a good question. I would say, one, it's not the best time to venture into the film industry. So if you're in school, I would definitely study other things that interest you as well. I'm not saying don't go into the film industry, but a good place to start is to work as a PA. That'll give you a sense as to how a film set is run, the different departments, and the different job responsibilities within those departments. You'll be able to talk to people who work in those different jobs and get a sense as to the day-to-day, and see if it's something that's going to be a good fit for you. It's definitely a lifestyle that you have to really like what you do, and it's hard to find that work-life balance.
Thank you so much for being on the show today. It was a pleasure getting to know your story as a professional, as an artist. In my opinion, you're doing a lot of technical work and getting to know the film industry a lot more. Thanks again for watching. To the listeners, we'll hope to see you back on the next episode. Thanks again, Michael.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone.
Bye.